Picture this. It's 11:30 on a Tuesday night. You're sitting at your computer. The glow of the monitor is just illuminating your exhausted face.
You've all been there.
Right. And you have exactly 17 tabs open on your browser.
At least 17.
Yeah, I mean, you've got 3 different airline portals,
Right.
4 hotel booking sites, a massive spreadsheet that you started with, the best of intentions.
Oh, the spreadsheet.
Always the spreadsheet. And a handful of travel blogs that, honestly, completely contradict each other.
Naturally.
So you're desperately trying to plan the perfect vacation, and you are absolutely convinced in your core that by doing all this yourself, you're actually saving money. You think you're, outsmarting the system.
It is practically a modern rite of passage. I mean, we treat booking a vacation like it's some competitive sport where the grand prize is keeping, a few extra dollars in our pocket.
Exactly.
And we completely ignore the psychological toll it takes to actually get there.
Which brings us to what we're tackling in today's deep dive. We are looking at the surprisingly complex and, somewhat counterintuitive economics of travel planning.
It's a fascinating space.
It really is. We're zeroing in on a specific business model from our source material today, which comes from Tanja. She's a travel advisor at Luxe Code Travel. You can find her at luxecodetravel.com or on LinkedIn.
Right.
And she does something that at first glance might make that late night tab hoarding version of you just completely recoil.
She definitely breaks the cardinal rule of how consumers assume the travel industry works.
Yeah, she charges a flat $150 upfront fee for comprehensive travel and cruise research.
Which is huge.
Because most travel advisors will happily work for you for free right up until the moment you actually book the trip. But Tanja does the exact opposite.
Yeah, it's a total flip.
And the mission of our deep dive today, the thesis we're testing, is her claim that this upfront charge actually protects you, the traveler, way more than it protects her as the advisor.
Which, like I said, is a massive departure from the norm. It completely flips the traditional service model on its head. It moves the advisor from being a salesperson to essentially a fiduciary.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we get into the psychology of why paying upfront might actually, save your sanity, we need to establish the baseline.
Right.
How does the traditional travel planning industry usually operate? And why does this upfront fee feel so disruptive to us as consumers? Because I think a lot of people just assume booking travel is inherently a free service.
Oh, absolutely. And that assumption is exactly where the trap begins.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, the standard model in the travel industry is historically commission-based. If you call a traditional advisor, they might spend days putting together an itinerary for you, and they don't charge you a dime for that research.
Yep.
They only get paid by the cruise line, the hotel, or, the tour operator if you actually book the trip through them.
Right.
So as a consumer, you've been conditioned to believe that travel advice and research should be free.
Yeah.
You think, hey, I have no skin in the game here. If I don't like it, I just walk away.
Wait, hold on, though. If I go rogue and I decide to just book the trip myself, say directly on a cruise line's website, I'm bypassing that advisor entirely.
Sure.
Doesn't that mean I'm saving that commission money? Shouldn't the cruise line give me a discount because they don't have to pay a middleman?
That is the greatest illusion in the travel industry.
Wait, really?
You are not saving a single cent. Travel providers, so we're talking cruise lines, major hotel chains, package tour operators, they bake a 10 to 15% commission right into their public-facing prices.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that margin is already in the price tag you see online. If you use an advisor, the vendor pays the advisor out of that margin.
Okay.
If you book it yourself, the vendor doesn't give you a discount. They just quietly pocket that extra 10 to 15% as pure profit.
So, let me get this straight. When I spend 12 hours building my own crazy spreadsheet, I am essentially just doing unpaid administrative labor for a multi-billion-dollar cruise line.
Precisely. You're doing the data entry, you're managing the logistics, you're taking on all the risk, and the vendor just keeps the money that was earmarked to pay a professional to do it for you.
That is wild.
You aren't getting a wholesale price, you're paying retail, and you're just doing the work yourself.
Okay, that completely changes the framing. Because when research is quote-unquote free, it means you, the traveler, are taking on the entire burden.
Exactly.
Doing it yourself usually means spending, 8 to 12 hours comparing endless websites. You're checking fluctuating prices. You're reading hundreds of potentially fake reviews.
Oh, the reviews are the worst.
And watching those shaky videos of hotel rooms that people post online.
Yeah, trying to figure out if it's a good view or not.
Yeah, right. And the fundamental problem Tanja identifies at Luxe Code Travel is just blunt. She says you are not a travel expert. You're just someone trying to miraculously become one over a single weekend.
Which is so true. I mean, we would never attempt to rewire our own house after watching a few online tutorials.
God, no.
But when it comes to navigating complex global logistics, international travel laws, and these dynamic pricing algorithms, we suddenly think we can just master it by Sunday evening.
But I have to push back on this a little bit.
Sure, go ahead.
Because I know what the DIY planners are screaming at their speakers right now. Isn't half the fun of a trip the anticipation, like the actual planning process?
Some people love it.
Right. It's like cooking your own meal. Why pay a private chef when you can go to the farmer's market, pick out the ingredients, and cook it yourself for free? There's a joy in the discovery.
What's fascinating here is that the cooking analogy perfectly illustrates the danger.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Cooking is fun when it's a hobby, when the stakes are low.
Yeah.
If you burn the meal, you just laugh and order a pizza.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
But planning a major international trip or a high-end cruise is not a low-stakes Sunday dinner. The stakes are thousands of dollars and your severely limited, precious vacation time.
That's a really good point.
And if we run the actual math on this quote-unquote free DIY research, the illusion falls apart really quickly. Let's say you value your own time at $50 an hour.
Which is pretty reasonable for a working professional.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you spend 10 hours doing this fun DIY research. You're bouncing between review sites. You're stressing over deck plans, trying to figure out if, like, a 2-hour layover in Charles de Gaulle Airport is enough time.
Spoiler, it's not.
Right. But you've instantly, invisibly, incurred a $500 opportunity cost. You have spent $500 worth of your own time to avoid paying a $150 research fee.
Wow. Put like that, it's kind of sobering.
The concept of DIY travel being free relies entirely on you valuing your own time at literally $0. We gladly pay for expertise in almost every other area of our lives, mechanics, accountants, fitness trainers, yet we treat high-stakes global travel logistics like it's a casual scrapbook project.
So you are already in the hole for $500 before you have even booked a flight.
Yep.
But let's move beyond just the value of our time, because a $500 opportunity cost is really just the invisible price tag. The real painful out-of-pocket expenses happen when those 10 hours of amateur weekend research inevitably lead to amateur decisions.
Oh, definitely.
And in the source material, this is what we're calling the $2,000 to $4,000 trap.
Right. That's the transition from an invisible cost to a very real credit card bill.
So let's look at how these mistakes actually happen, because I consider myself a pretty smart person. I know how to read a map, and I know how to spot a bad Yelp review. How do I accidentally lose $4,000 just because I didn't pay an upfront fee? It seems like cruises are a particular minefield for the DIY planner here.
Cruises are incredibly complex floating cities. They're not just hotels on water.
Okay.
Let's take the classic example, booking a cabin. You log on to the cruise line's website, you pull up the deck plan. It's a two-dimensional drawing.
Right, just pick a square.
Exactly. You see a nice room midship, it looks perfectly fine, so you book it. What that 2D drawing does not show you is architectural acoustic blade.
Acoustic blade.
Yes. You don't realize until you're unpacking your suitcase that your specific cabin is located directly above the ship's main theater.
Oh.
And every single night, the bass from the Broadway-style review is thumping through your floorboards until midnight.
That sounds miserable.
The subwoofers are literally bolted to the ceiling below your bed. A professional advisor knows the ship's actual blueprints, not just the marketing diagrams.
So the DIY traveler thinks they scored a great midship deal, but they've essentially volunteered for a sleep deprivation experiment.
Exactly. And suddenly, the vacation you spent thousands of dollars on is completely ruined because you didn't have the structural context.
Then there is the dining and excursion disaster. I found this part of Luxe Code Travel's methodology fascinating because it exposes the underlying mechanics of how these companies actually make money.
Right.
Let's say I want to eat at the fancy steakhouse on board, or, I want to swim with dolphins in the port. If I just wait until I get on the ship to book these, what happens?
You fall victim to dynamic yield management.
Dynamic yield management.
Yeah. Cruise lines operate on artificial scarcity and psychological momentum. They open their specialty dining and prime excursions usually 90 days before sailing.
Okay, why 90 days?
Because they want you to commit your money early. They want you to view those expenses as sunk costs long before you step foot on the gangway.
I see.
If you pre-book, your onboard account starts at zero, which means you feel psychologically freer to spend more money at the casino or the bar once you are actually sailing.
Okay, so if I don't know about that invisible 90-day window, and I just wait until I board to make my reservations.
The algorithms penalize you heavily. You'll either find that the steakhouse has been sold out for 3 months, leaving you to fight for scraps at the buffet, or you will pay a massively inflated premium for whatever excursion slots are left.
That's brutal.
The DIY traveler gets hit with these surge prices simply because they didn't know the timeline the industry operates on.
And it's not just cruises either. The same logic applies to general travel. Think about a typical hotel booking. You go online, you see this gorgeous, wide-angle, perfectly color-corrected photo of a resort pool. It just looks like paradise.
But that photo doesn't show you that your specific room category shares a paper-thin wall with the main elevator shaft, or that the resort is currently undergoing massive construction right next door.
Or even the timing of the trip. The algorithms are brutal here, too. A DIY planner might book a trip for the second week of June just because it sounds nice, completely unaware they are stepping right into the massively expensive peak season.
Right.
If they had just shifted their dates by 10 days into the shoulder season, they would have had better weather, half the crowds, and they could have cut the cost of the trip by 30%.
This is what Tanja refers to as knowing the difference between marketing and reality.
That's a great phrase.
It really is. And this is why these $2,000 to $4,000 mistakes happen. Without an expert's cultivated context, everyday travelers just fall victim to idealized marketing photos. A brochure is never going to tell you about the late-night disco under your bed.
No, of course not.
And a booking engine is never going to pop up with a helpful warning saying, hey, wait, if you book this same trip 2 weeks later, it's 40% cheaper.
Because marketing is designed to generate an emotional yes. It wants you to click buy now while you were staring at a picture of a sunset.
But reality is the friction. Reality is the hidden resort fees, the port taxes, the acoustic bleed, and the strategic timing. The amateur is reacting to the emotion of the marketing, while the expert is managing the friction of reality.
So the DIY traveler is navigating a minefield blindfolded. They think they're saving $100, but they're risking $4,000 because they don't have the ship's architectural blueprint or the algorithm's timeline.
Exactly.
But let me play devil's advocate here for a second. Let's pivot to the solution Tanja offers.
Okay.
If I hand over $150 up front, what stops an advisor from just running a quick Google search, pasting the top 10 results into a PDF, and just calling it a day? Like, how do I, as a consumer, know that I'm actually getting reality and not just repackaged marketing?
It comes down to tangible deliverables and access to specialized systems. When you pay a professional fee, you aren't paying for someone to do your Googling for you.
Right.
You're paying for a synthesized product built from databases the public cannot access. Travel advisors use a global distribution system, or GDS. They have direct lines to dedicated consortium reps.
Meaning they aren't looking at the same Expedia screen I am.
Not at all. For your upfront fee, you get a side-by-side comparison of options, whether that's 2 different cruise lines or 2 distinct travel styles that are perfectly tailored to your dates and your budget.
Okay, that makes sense.
You get specific cabin or hotel recommendations that are mapped against noise considerations. But most importantly, you get financial clarity. You get a real pricing breakdown.
And this is huge because the drip pricing illusion is where consumers really bleed the most money.
Oh, absolutely.
You see a promo online for, $500 per person, but by the time you actually click through to the checkout cart, they have added port fees, government taxes, mandatory gratuities, and Wi-Fi packages, and suddenly it's $1,200.
Right, and the professional research cuts through that drip pricing. It exposes all those non-commissionable fares and hidden fees right up front, so your budget is based on reality, not some promotional illusion.
That is so valuable.
And finally, you get the strategic roadmap. You get the itinerary, the logistics, and the dining timelines, so you know exactly which day that 90-day booking window opens.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Let's look at the risk reversal mechanism built into this business model. Because that $150 isn't actually a sunk cost.
Right.
If you look at all this synthesized research, the real pricing, the noise mapping, and you decide, yes, this looks amazing, let's proceed, that initial fee is applied to your booking. It is literally absorbed into the cost of the trip.
It basically acts as a deposit on their implementation services.
But the kicker is the no pressure guarantee. Even if you look at the research and decide, you know what, I changed my mind, or I want to take this data and book it myself on my own credit card, you walk away with the professional research. You own it. You aren't held hostage by the information.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, this is a brilliant consumer protection strategy. Think about the psychology of the traditional commission-only model.
Okay.
If an advisor works for free, their absolute only way to feed their family is to close the sale. That creates a massive inherent conflict of interest.
Right, because they need you to buy.
Exactly. They are financially incentivized to push you toward a booking, any booking. And human nature dictates they might even subtly push you toward a more expensive trip, or maybe toward a specific vendor that happens to offer a higher commission rate that month.
Because if you say no and walk away, they just worked for 10 hours for literally $0. They have to pressure you. The model demands it.
It forces them to be salespeople first and advisors second. But by charging an upfront fee for the research, Luxe Code Travel's model completely removes the pressure of the wasted sales call.
That makes total sense.
The advisor has been compensated fairly for their time, their access to the GDS, and their expertise, regardless of what you ultimately decide to do. This perfectly aligns the advisor's incentives with yours.
They don't need to sell you a cruise, they just need to sell you the truth about the cruise.
Exactly. Their only goal is to provide clear, objective, high-quality expertise, because that is the specific product you paid for. It fundamentally shifts the power dynamic. It turns the advisor from a commissioned salesperson hustling to lock in a deal into an objective strategic partner who is protecting your blind spots.
So what does this all mean? When we zoom out and look at the economics of this entire process, the core takeaway for you, the listener, is a complete reframing of how we value services. Paying $150 upfront for travel research isn't an extra fee tacked onto your vacation budget. It is a highly efficient, remarkably cheap insurance policy.
That is definitely the most accurate way to categorize it. It is pure risk mitigation.
It's an insurance policy against those 10 hours of lost personal time playing spreadsheet jockey. It's an insurance policy against those $2,000 to $4,000 amateur mistakes driven by algorithms you don't control. And it is certainly insurance against the profound stress of staring at the ceiling while the bass from a cruise ship theater rattles your teeth at midnight. It is the literal definition of Luxe Code Travel's operating motto, which is simply helping you book smarter, not harder. You are buying the reality instead of volunteering to be a victim of the marketing.
And that sharp distinction between marketing and reality leaves us with a really fascinating thread to pull on.
How so?
Well, we've spent this time analyzing the travel industry, but this raises an important question about our behavior in general. Consider the other areas of your life where you rely on free tools, free services, or free advice to make complex decisions.
I mean, the internet has basically convinced us that everything should be free.
Think about the free investment apps that gamify the stock market, or the free tax software that guides you through really complicated financial filings, or even the free content you consume to make major life or health choices.
Yeah, that's everywhere.
What is the invisible price tag you are paying in those areas? Are you bleeding opportunity costs and hours of frustration? Are you falling for the marketing of a slick user interface while missing the hidden fees, the algorithmic biases, and the logistical realities?
That is a scary thought.
We really have to ask ourselves, in our relentless pursuit of saving a few upfront dollars, where else are we unintentionally volunteering to be an amateur in a high-stakes game simply because the initial cost of entry was zero?
That is a thought that is going to stick with me next time I have 17 tabs open for anything, honestly, not just a vacation. It really forces you to rethink the true total cost of free. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning those invisible price tags, and we will catch you next time.